Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. She stood in front of the mirror adjusting her lipstick like she was heading to an award show, not ending a marriage. Then, without even turning around, she said, "You know, I've been lying to myself for years. You were never enough for me." I didn't say anything. I was still holding her necklace in my hand, the one I'd untangled that morning thinking I was doing something helpful. Pathetic, really. She slid on her heels, looked me up and down like I was a dish she'd already tasted and grown bored of, and added, "I need someone who challenges me, not someone who waits around hoping I'll notice him." She grabbed her coat. "You don't deserve me, Bennett. You never did." That was the last thing she said before she walked out. No tears, no pause, not even a glance back. She didn't slam the door. She didn't have to. It was the quietest destruction I've ever experienced. I didn't chase her. I just stood there in my socks, still clutching that stupid necklace, trying to remember when things actually started falling apart. Was it when she stopped asking me how my day was? When she started sleeping on the far edge of the bed? Or maybe it was that dinner where she called me nice in front of her coworkers like it was an insult. It didn't matter. She was gone. I gave her what she wanted: space, freedom, silence. I moved out 2 days later and found a one-bedroom above a dry cleaner that always smells like burnt starch. I started living like a ghost. Woke up, worked, ordered takeout, scrolled mindlessly. The kind of routine that convinces you you're functioning when really you're just waiting to stop hurting. Then came the reunion. Card in the mail. Glossy. Fancy. 20 years. Same gymnasium, new lights. I almost threw it out, until I saw her name on the planning committee. Waverly. Not just attending. Hosting. I don't know why I RSVP'd yes. I didn't have a plan. No big reveal. No makeover. Just a button-down that didn't wrinkle too easily and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd look at me the way she used to before I became invisible. But I wasn't ready for what actually happened that night. Because what I discovered at that reunion wasn't just about her. It was about lies, secrets, and the one thing I never expected to find, a reason she walked away that had nothing to do with me, and everything to do with what she'd been hiding. The night of the reunion felt like walking into a dream I never signed up for. Strings of white lights dangled from the gym ceiling. Music from 2 decades ago played too softly through cheap speakers, and people I hadn't seen since graduation were suddenly hugging like we all hadn't silently judged each other for years. I kept to the wall, sipping flat punch from a plastic cup, doing my best to look invisible. It didn't work. "Bennett? No way. You showed up." Someone shouted from behind. I turned and was face to face with Kurt Rowley, the guy who peaked in junior year, still somehow tan in October and still wearing a polo 2 sizes too tight. He slapped my shoulder and grinned. "Man, Waverly's gonna flip when she sees you." I tried to fake a smile, but my stomach turned. I scanned the room. She wasn't there yet, or at least not in sight. For a second, I thought about leaving, just walking out the back door and ghosting the whole thing. But I couldn't. I needed to see her. Not for revenge. Not to impress her. I didn't even know what I was hoping for. Maybe I just needed proof that she'd moved on, something final. Something to close the loop that had been haunting me. Then she walked in. Late, of course. She always did love an entrance. Waverly entered like she owned the place. Hair curled, dress sleek, heels tapping like a metronome across the hardwood. People turned. Eyes widened. Laughter rose around her as old friends gathered like moths to a flame. And on her arm was him, tall, clean-shaven, and wearing the kind of smirk that made me instantly hate him. They looked like the couple in a credit card commercial. Effortless. Polished. Pretend. I backed into the shadows, heart pounding in my throat, telling myself I didn't care. But I did. Too much. She didn't notice me at first. But about 20 minutes later, when they were near the photo booth, her eyes locked on mine. Just for a second. Long enough to freeze my entire body. Her smile faltered. She turned away. It was subtle. Quick. But I saw it. Regret. That 1 second shifted everything. I knew that look. I'd seen it when she forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. When she said my name under her breath the night I left. It wasn't guilt. It was hesitation. And behind it, fear. I moved toward the hallway to breathe. I needed air, needed to get away before I did something stupid. But just before I reached the door, I heard a whisper. Bennett, wait. It was her voice. I turned around slowly, pulse racing. She stood alone now, without him. Eyes wide, arms crossed like she didn't know what to do with them. For a moment we just stood there, years of silence crashing between us. Then she said something that hit me harder than the day she left. I never wanted you to come tonight. That should have broken me. Instead, it raised one burning question in my mind. What was she afraid I'd find out if I stayed? I stood there in that dim hallway, trying to figure out if I just imagined what she said. I never wanted you to come tonight. Those words kept echoing in my head, but the look in her eyes wasn't anger or annoyance. It was panic, like she'd seen a ghost. Like my presence wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. She took a step closer, arms still crossed, shifting uncomfortably in those expensive heels she used to mock when other women wore them. That alone told me how much she'd changed. Waverly, I said, quieter than I meant to. Why don't you want me here? She opened her mouth, closed it again, glanced back over her shoulder toward the gym. This isn't the time or place. I just didn't expect you to actually show up. Then why was I invited? I asked. My voice wasn't shaking, but there was a handwritten note on the invitation. Someone wanted me here. Her eyes flicked toward me. That wasn't from me. Then who? She didn't wait for me to ask. She just stepped past me and whispered, You shouldn't be here, Bennett. You really shouldn't. Then she disappeared back into the gym before I could stop her. I leaned against the cold tile wall, confused and nauseous. What the hell was going on? I decided I needed some air and walked out to the side parking lot. A few people were out there sneaking smokes or catching up in hushed tones. I sat on the curb, feeling like a high schooler all over again, until someone sat beside me. Uninvited. Thought you looked like a man in the middle of a mystery. I turned and saw her. Tara Marston. Used to be Waverly's best friend. Back when we were all just dumb kids at lockers pretending our lives would turn out like movies. Tara had changed too. Sharper jawline, tired eyes, still had that sarcastic smirk though. She held out a flask. I shook my head. You and Waverly still close? I asked. Tara snorted. Not since she stopped being honest with herself, or with anyone else. That got my attention. I looked at her directly now. She told me she never wanted me to show up tonight. Tara sighed. She didn't. Because this night is built on a lie, and you're the one person who could pull the wrong thread and unravel it. What lie? She didn't answer right away. Just stared out into the parking lot like the night sky had the guts to say what she wouldn't. Then, quietly, she muttered, Ask her date. Philip? That guy? He's not who she pretends he is. And if you stay long enough, you'll see why she's so scared. Before I could press further, she stood up, smoothed her jacket, and walked off with one final glance over her shoulder. Sometimes the truth isn't hidden. It's just wearing a very good suit. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even go home. I sat in my car outside the reunion for another hour, watching people leave. Waverly and Philip were one of the last to exit, laughing too loudly, her hand gripping his arm a little too tightly. Something wasn't right, not just with them but with the whole evening. Her behavior, her panic, Tara's warning. It was all building into something I didn't understand yet. But the next day I found the thread Tara mentioned. And when I pulled it, I uncovered the first secret. A photo. One Waverly thought she'd deleted. One that told me everything she was desperate to hide. The photo was buried deep in an old shared cloud album we had forgotten existed, or at least I had. Back when we were married, we synced everything for convenience. Birthdays, vacations, receipts, screenshots. I never bothered to delete my access, and I doubt she remembered I still had it. I wasn't even looking for anything incriminating. Honestly, I just couldn't sleep. So at 3 in the morning, I opened the app and started scrolling, telling myself it was harmless nostalgia. And then it stopped being harmless. There was a folder called Event Prep, Last updated 5 months ago. I clicked, expecting a collection of venue decorations or dress options. Instead, I found pictures of Waverly and Philip, but not from the last few weeks. These were from nearly a year ago. Same man, same smile, same suit jacket he wore at the reunion. Except back then, Waverly was still married to me. I sat up straight, pulse pounding, staring at the timestamps. A dinner here, a beach weekend there. One photo from the balcony of a hotel I recognized, because she had told me she was attending a women's empowerment conference that same weekend. And there she was, in a robe, glass of champagne in hand, with Philip's bare shoulder visible behind her. I stared at that image for what felt like hours. Not because it surprised me. Deep down, some part of me had always feared she'd found someone else. But what hit hardest was the date. It was 6 months before she ever told me I didn't deserve her. 6 months of sleeping next to me, sharing dinners, pretending we were still a team, while already building a life with someone else. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone, to drive to her place and demand answers. But instead, I sat there, numb. I felt like a ghost in my own story, like I'd been edited out of my own life, quietly replaced. The next morning, I called the only person who might tell me the truth, Tara. She picked up after 2 rings. I didn't waste time. How long has it been going on? I asked. Silence. I found the photos, I added. Don't lie to me. She sighed. I didn't know if I should tell you. You seemed so broken after she left. I figured. Maybe you didn't need more pain. I need the truth, I said, my voice cracking. Please. She hesitated. Over a year, maybe longer. She met him at some executive retreat. Started seeing him during your marriage. Told people you two were separated, even when you weren't. I only found out when someone else mentioned it. And no one told me? We didn't think it was our place. She made sure to control the narrative. Said you were too comfortable. That you wouldn't fight for her. That she needed someone more assertive. I laughed bitterly. Of course. She'd rewritten history to justify betrayal. Turned me into the villain of her own guilt. But here's what really got me. The photo had GPS data. It had been taken at a resort less than 2 hours from our home. While I was dog-sitting for her friend and thinking she was networking for her career, she was sipping cocktails in bed with the man she'd replaced me with. My hands were shaking. She hadn't just moved on. She had rehearsed her escape, step by step, while still letting me cook her dinner and warm her side of the bed. And now I understood why she panicked at the reunion. Not because I still had a place in her heart, but because I had the power to ruin the version of the story she'd sold to everyone else, including him. But I wasn't going to expose her publicly. No, I had a better idea. I was going to make her confess, in front of the one person she was most desperate to fool. I never thought of myself as someone who could manipulate a situation, but that morning, I surprised even myself. I wasn't going to explode, scream, or humiliate her in front of a crowd. That would only validate whatever story she'd already planted in his head. No, what I had planned was quieter, sharper. The kind of truth you can't deny when it's standing inches from your face. The kind of truth that forces someone to either lie again or choke on their own words. I waited 2 days. Let the reunion fade. Let her settle into the illusion that I'd gone back to my pathetic little corner of the world. And then I reached out to Philip. It wasn't hard. A quick search led to his company's profile. He was a strategic consultant, which, from what I could gather, mostly meant getting paid to use vague language and wear expensive watches. His business email was listed right there. So I sent a short, polite message. Hi Philip. I think we may have some overlapping history that's worth a conversation. No drama, just a few things I believe you should know. If you're open to grabbing coffee this week, I'm around. Bennett. I expected to be ignored. But 20 minutes later, he replied. Hey Bennett, I appreciate the mature tone. Sure. I'm free Thursday afternoon. Send a time and place. He had no idea what was coming. We met at a quiet cafe not far from his office. He showed up in a blazer, looking polished and confident. I showed up in the same coat I'd worn at the reunion. I wasn't interested in posturing, just the truth. He shook my hand like we were doing a business deal. I let him sit first. "Thanks for meeting," I said. He nodded, waited. "I want to ask you something," I continued. "Did Waverly ever tell you when exactly she and I separated?" He furrowed his brow. "She said you two were on and off for a while, that it was emotionally over long before she officially left." There it was, the foundation of the lie. I pulled out my phone, opened the cloud album, and slid it across the table. The photo stared up at him. Waverly in that white robe, the champagne, his shoulder clearly visible. The date sat neatly at the bottom. He stared at it for a long time. Too long. That's not right," he muttered. "She told me you were done by then." "We weren't," I said. "We were living together, sharing meals, trying to work on things. I was still sleeping in the same bed as her when this was taken." He didn't look up, just kept staring. "I'm not here to ruin your relationship," I added. "Frankly, I don't care what happens between you two. But I think you deserve to know the truth. Because if she lied to me while sleeping in my bed, she can lie to you while sitting across from yours." Finally, he looked up, and in his eyes, I saw something I didn't expect: doubt. Not anger, not denial, but that quiet unraveling that happens when the version of the person you love starts to crack. "I didn't know," he said. "She didn't want me at the reunion because she knew the mask would slip. She's curated her story. I was the boring husband who didn't challenge her. The invisible one. You were the upgrade." He sat back in his chair, jaw tight. "She said you were emotionally distant, that she had to build a new life or she'd disappear." "I might have been distant," I admitted, "but I never lied. I never cheated. And I never used someone else's heart as a stepping stone." We sat in silence after that. Nothing left to say. I got up, nodded once, and left him there with the evidence and his doubts. Later that night, I got a text from Waverly. Just one line. "Why would you do this?" I didn't reply. She didn't deserve an answer. Not after rewriting me into the villain of a story I was never even allowed to finish. But the next day, something even stranger happened. Philip called me, and what he told me changed everything I thought I knew. Not just about Waverly, but about how far she'd gone to keep her perfect world intact. Philip's voice over the phone wasn't what I expected. It wasn't furious or defensive. It was cold, calculated, as if something had snapped into place the moment he'd seen that photo, and now he was speaking to me not as a rival, but as someone who had just realized he'd been played. He asked to meet again, said he needed to show me something, and this time his tone didn't ask. It demanded. We met at a park near the business district. Neutral ground. When I arrived, he was already sitting on a bench, staring down at a thick envelope in his hands. He didn't stand up, didn't offer a handshake, just looked at me and said, "I think you should see this." He handed me the envelope. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, even a few pages that looked like legal correspondence. At first, it didn't make sense. There were messages between Waverly and someone named Lizette, a coworker, apparently, talking about timelines, contracts, and one recurring phrase that kept catching my eye: position secured. "What is this?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. Waverly told me she got her promotion last year because she led a successful expansion campaign. But this, he tapped the pages. This says she leveraged me. She used our relationship and my contacts to pressure one of my clients into endorsing her. I blinked. Wait, so she didn't earn that on her own? She orchestrated the entire thing, made it look organic. The emails show her bragging to Lizette that she had him wrapped, and that I'd do anything to protect her reputation. She even joked about how easy it was to shape the narrative. Once she'd painted you as the jealous ex, I felt my stomach twist. He went on. "After you showed me that photo, I started digging. She always kept things a little too vague. Told me not to ask too many questions. Said her past was complicated and that you were unstable." He looked at me, and there was shame in his expression now. "She made me think you were some bitter loser clinging to her shadow. I believed her, until I saw the dates." My hands tightened around the papers. Why are you telling me this? Because I think she's trying to do the same thing to me now. Something feels off. The way she reacts when I push back. The defensiveness. The sudden silences. I don't know what her endgame is, but I'm done being part of it. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to gloat, to say I told him so. But mostly I just felt exhausted. This woman, who once used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms, had somehow become a master manipulator. She hadn't just rewritten our history. She'd weaponized it to climb the ladder, to shield herself from scrutiny, and to control the people closest to her. Philip stood up. I'm leaving her. I haven't told her yet, but I'm done. I'll handle the fallout on my end. I looked at him. She won't go quietly. I know. He gave me a tired smile. But now I understand why she didn't want you around. You were the only piece of the puzzle she couldn't control. As he walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year: clarity. The pain was still there, of course. The humiliation, the questions. But now, there was a strange peace in knowing the truth hadn't been lost. It had just been buried. Later that night, I got another text from Waverly. Don't think I don't know what you're doing. You always had to make things harder than they needed to be. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because the damage was done. The version of herself she'd built, the confident, untouchable, reinvented woman, had finally fractured. And the best part? I wasn't the one who had to tear it down. 2 days after Philip walked out of her life, Waverly showed up at my door. No text, no call. Just the sharp, unmistakable knock that I hadn't heard in over a year, the rhythm of someone who felt entitled to be let in. I stood there behind the door for a few seconds, unsure whether to open it at all. But curiosity, or maybe the faint echo of who I used to be, got the better of me. I pulled the door open. She was standing there in a trench coat, not a hair out of place, lips pressed tight like she had rehearsed every sentence in the car. Her eyes were hollow in a way I hadn't seen before. Not the confident, smirking version of her from the reunion, but something fragile, desperate. Can I come in? She asked. No, I said, and stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me. She blinked, clearly not expecting that. Bennett, please. I just need to explain. You don't owe me explanations, remember? I didn't deserve you, right? My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. She winced, then looked down at her hands. Philip left. I know, I said. He told me why. Her eyes shot back to mine, and I saw it, that flicker of panic she couldn't hide fast enough. He doesn't understand the full picture, she said quickly. He saw one piece and assumed the worst. I folded my arms. You lied to him about when we split. You used him to get ahead at work. You manipulated our divorce to make yourself look like the victim. I think he understood just fine. She stepped forward, voice dropping. You're enjoying this, aren't you? That got a laugh out of me. Enjoying? No. Watching a house of cards collapse after I was told I didn't deserve to play? That's just closure. Waverly's mask slipped a little more. Her shoulders sagged, and she looked suddenly very small. I made mistakes, but you weren't exactly a dream to be with, Bennett. You were passive, distant, and loyal. I cut in. Don't forget that part. You told the world I didn't fight for you. But the truth is, you never gave me a fair fight to begin with. You started a war in your head, and I lost without even knowing I was a contestant. She didn't reply. For the first time in years, she was speechless. No comeback, no polished lines. Just her and the broken remains of the story she'd sold herself. I didn't come here to beg, she finally said, eyes wet. But I guess I hoped you'd still see me, not who I pretended to be. I looked at her for a long time. This wasn't about reconciliation. She didn't miss me. She missed the idea of being someone better, and that version had just crumbled in front of her. She was here because she needed someone to witness her fall. But I wasn't going to catch her. Not anymore. You want the truth? I said. I do still see you, Waverly. That's the problem. I see exactly who you are now. And that's why this ends here. Her breath caught. She nodded slowly, wiped under her eyes, and turned to leave. No dramatic exit. No slamming doors. Just the sound of her heels fading into the street. And that was it. No apologies. No grand redemption. Just two people who had finally stopped pretending. But what happened the next morning, the envelope taped to my door with no return address, proved she wasn't done yet. Not even close. The envelope was plain, sealed with clear tape, and had no return name or address. Just my name written in her handwriting, the one I used to love. For a brief second, I thought she might have sent an apology letter, some final attempt at closure now that her stories had unraveled. But when I opened it, what I found was something completely unexpected. Inside were legal documents, originals, a copy of our divorce agreement, bank statements, printouts of emails she must have dug up, and a handwritten note at the top, 5 words, "This should have always been yours." I flipped through the pages in disbelief. One account in particular caught my eye, a savings fund I'd started before we got married, one she had accidentally drained during the divorce by claiming it was marital property. I never fought her on it. I didn't have the strength back then. But now there was a transfer confirmation back into my name. Tens of thousands of dollars. No explanation. No strings. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't love. But maybe, just maybe, it was her way of admitting she'd taken too much from someone who had asked for so little. For the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy exactly, but lightness. A weight that had been pressing on my chest for over a year lifted. I didn't text her. I didn't write back. I just closed the envelope, placed it in a drawer, and stepped outside into the sun. The world hadn't changed. She hadn't magically become a better person. But I had changed. I was no longer the man who clung to silence, waiting to be noticed. I had found my voice, not through shouting or revenge, but by standing tall in the face of her lies and walking away anyway. And you know what? That reunion, the one she tried so hard to control, it didn't destroy me. It woke me up. I started seeing old friends again. I deleted the Cloud album. I bought a cheap bike and started riding every morning. Sounds small, but it's not. It's momentum. It's proof that sometimes losing someone who never really saw you is exactly what it takes to finally see yourself. So no, I didn't get the girl. I got something better. I got me back. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. Have you ever had someone try to rewrite your story? And how did you take it back? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this one.